we must have pie. Stress cannot exist in the presence of pie. David Marmot.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the retirement answer man, Roger Whitney.
Can you think back to when you were in college and you were just applying for college and you had to choose your major? What course of studies were you going to focus on in your 4 or maybe 5 years of school? Would it be economics? Would it be criminal justice? Or perhaps engineering? Man, I remember thinking, if I pick the wrong major, I am going to screw up the rest of my life. There was a lot of stress in that. Now, fast forward, you remember coming out of college and taking that first full-time employment position at a company? Again, the same type of stress came up. Man, if I don't pick the right job and surround myself with the right people, my life's ruined. I could be stuck in a company and never have a second chance again. Another stressful time of life. Another stressful time of life, which you're facing probably right now or coming soon, is retirement and all of the financial stress that comes around money and retirement. Because this time, it's not about starting a career, it's about ending a career, ending all of the income, and having to depend on your assets and whatever else you got to maintain your standard of living. That's pretty scary. That's pretty stressful stuff. You know, if you want a $100,000 a year lifestyle in retirement, if you look at the rule of 25, well, you'd have to save about 25 times that, which is $2.5 million. Takes a lot of effort to save $2.5 million. That's pretty stressful. We're going to talk about money stress today. And I got a good friend on who just wrote a book about stopping money stress and how to have a better relationship with money so you can be proactive in making your decisions. But we can't do any of that until, yep, you know it, get to that all-important disclaimer. If there's one thing I know for sure is don't take advice from Roger Whitney on this show. That's just silly. Roger doesn't know you. You hardly know Roger. How can he give you advice? So think of this show as helpful hints in education. Before you make any decisions, talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor, because that's just common sense. Now, let's see what this stress stuff is he's talking about. I think one of the things that can cause the most stress when we're dealing with retirement is really not having confidence and clarity about how we're going to manage this future life in retirement. And unfortunately, traditional retirement planning just doesn't work anymore. So if you are serious about creating a great life in retirement, you need a different approach. You need an agile approach. And that's why I created a 3-video series on how to rethink how you're making decisions, not just about money, but about life and this journey into retirement. It's called the 5-Minute Retirement Makeover, and you can get it for free by going to 5minuteretirementmakeover.com. Now let's get on with the topic of the day. So in the news today, Gallup came out with their most recent survey on measuring financial worry in Americans. They've been conducting a survey on a number of financial issues, gauging how worried we are about them since 2001. And it edged up in total. Worry of Americans about finances edged up a little bit over 2015. But top on the list, as it was last year, is not having enough money for retirement. At 64% of Americans are worried about that. Now, second on the list is not being able to pay the cost of medical expenses for injury or accident, which makes total sense. And then third on the list at 51% is not being able to maintain the standard of living that you enjoy. And I'll have a link to the survey on Six Shot Saturday. What surprises me about this survey is that the 64% number for not having enough for retirement isn't higher. And I think one of the reasons is that we have a lot of millennials in the survey. It's the entire country. It's not just looking at baby boomers or people close to it. In reality, 51% of American workers have less than $100,000 saved for retirement. But this issue of worry about money and stress about money, it can be a good or a bad thing, right? It can be a bad thing because what I've seen a lot of people do is simply ignore it, where it's a stressful issue or it's a worrisome issue, and rather than start to take proactive steps to gain some control over the situation, they just ignore it and avoid it. So that's the bad. The positive of stress and worry can be that it is a motivator to get someone moving in the right direction. And I've seen both of those attitudes in clients that I've worked with. And it really can change the difference of how proactive and intentional someone is when they're creating a plan to have a great retirement and to actually become more intentional about it. So we know that financial stress and worry is a big deal, especially as you get close to retirement because of all the big changes coming about. So I wanted to invite on someone we've had on the show before, Emily Guy Berkin. She is a financial author, has written a number of books, including Making Social Security Work for You and The 5 Years Before Retirement. And she's good at putting together checklists and worksheets. So we invited her on the show to talk about her new book. So let's go find out what that is. So in the practical planning segment today, we are going to have a conversation with Emily Guy Berkin, the author of End Financial Stress Now, Immediate Steps You Can Take to Improve Your Financial Outlook. And what I really like about this book is that it's action-oriented. In fact, in the book, you can actually go through some exercises to start to gain power and intentionality in your financial decision-making. So let's talk to Emily about financial stress and about her new book. Tell me about your financial stress.
I do not have the normal financial stress that most people have. Very few times in my life have I ever had the, I don't know how I'm going to pay this bill kind of stress, because I'm a money nerd, and part of something I find fun is organizing my finances. My stress actually comes from when I feel like I'm getting money that I don't deserve. So the biggest stressor that I've had from this was my father passed away in 2013, and I was one of the beneficiaries of his life insurance. My sister and I were co-beneficiaries. And, I was a 34-year-old adult at that point. So I did not count on my father for any money. So he very much intended this life insurance policy to be a gift. And yet I felt such guilt about this money and was so stressed out about it. And so I was congratulating myself on finding good things to do with the money. I set up some 529 accounts for my sons and sent some to my retirement accounts, and sent some to charity, all of which I was like, Dad would like that I did this. It took me a few years to recognize that was all my stress talking, that I was so stressed about this money that I needed it to not be under my direct control anymore. And then I felt better.
Well, I was going to say that's interesting, that response to it, because that's one of those sort of hits some of the concepts in your book of it's applying all that emotional connection to something that's really just another resource to figure out how to allocate, right?
Yeah. And also, intellectually, I knew Dad would not have wanted me to stress about it. He would have wanted me to enjoy it, But even knowing that intellectually, and recognizing that, the decisions I was making, you can't claim that I squandered the money. I mean, I didn't make any, quote unquote, bad decisions with the money, but I didn't make the decisions that would necessarily really fit with what my needs were and what my wants were at that point in my life. So yeah, it was really interesting once I finally kind of dug into the feelings that I had about that deep enough to recognize just how deeply stressed that money made me.
That's really interesting. I find that all the time with what I do. I mean, I've been managing assets and planning for clients for over 25 years, and I struggle with every single thing. It's so much easier to talk to them than to talk to myself. about those types of
Absolutely.
So why do you think there's so much financial stress around money?
There's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, one of it is that money is this really weird concept. It's an idea we all share. There's no such thing as money in nature. So because of that, it's something that we've decided as a society that these little green pieces of paper and these numbers on a computer screen are worth something. So because it's not something that has its own inherent value, we put our own meaning to money. And so because we put our own meaning on money, so it could be an emotional or psychological or even a moral meaning that we put on money, we are getting stressed because of those underlying meanings rather than about the little green pieces of paper. There's nothing stressful about little green pieces of paper. It's the meaning we put to it, or put to having it, to not having it, to having to work for it, and all of those things just causes us stress.
And I agree with that, and it happens without even realizing it. I was having this conversation with my assistant the other day about goals for our business, and the natural inclination is always more, right? And if those that have more are, quote unquote, more successful, which isn't necessarily the case. That it is by that definition, but that's a really narrow definition.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of those things that these meanings are so deeply embedded both in our culture and in our own individual psyches that we don't even realize that we've got these kind of strange ideas about, something that, again, it's ultimately comes down to little green pieces of paper. And so that's because of that, we don't realize that we're treading these odd paths in our brains about money that, is causing us stress we don't need to have.
Now, one thing I've noticed, and I'd be interested if you have some insight on this, is, I deal with people that are getting ready to or in retirement, transitioning into whatever retirement is, but we'll use that word. And I've found that the relationship with money changes when they don't have a job. And you talk about scarcity mentality. That scarcity mentality can really kick in, especially when you're beyond your peak earning years.
Yeah, that's something, your relationship with money changes throughout your life. Even if you just think about the way that you spent money and the way you viewed money when you were first working, first out of college, you got your first job, or the first time you got a big raise, and then the way that you view money once you have a family to raise. And then again, the way you view money once you are drawing down your assets in retirement rather than earning more and saving. And so that change in relationship can be kind of a friction point because you are used to money being one way, and then there's a change and it's going to be another way. And we don't really prepare people for that emotional reaction. And so people end up doing things that are not necessarily the most rational or best decision. They are so worried about outliving their money that they underspend, or they become worried about outliving their money. And so they're like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm going to outlive it anyway and spend too much. So, there's a lot of different ways that people can overreact to these kind of friction points when your relationship changes with money.
And a lot of times those relationships change. It's not like there's a bell that rings, right? It just sort of happens. And then some people never catch themselves. And some people say, wait a second, this is different.
Yeah, and you'll have that a lot where people, keep spending at their former levels after retirement just because that's how it's always been. And it takes a few years for them to realize, oh, whoa, we're spending too much. And you also have people who are so spending averse and so worried about it that they, anticipate things that probably aren't going to happen.
Now, do you think a lot of the relationship of money is caused by just what we consume in terms of it being a product-driven consumer type of economy?
That is a big part of it. Everywhere you go, you get spend, spend, spend messages in our culture. Our culture has not valued like frugality in a real way for a long time. And so that's something that it has an effect. One of the things that I found in my research that was really interesting is that there's something called money scripts, which is the unconscious beliefs you have about money. And those unconscious beliefs are generally formed in childhood based on how money is viewed in your childhood home, and then also based on whatever financial traumas or benefits you had as a child. Well, what's really fascinating about money scripts is that they can be handed down from generation to generation. So the grandchildren of people who lived through the Depression are still feeling the effects of their grandparents' money scripts. So the guilt that I felt about money that I didn't earn, actually, I can probably pinpoint where that came from. My grandmother on my father's side was the daughter of subsistence farmers in Kentucky, and she regarded the government and rich people with a great deal of suspicion. And while I don't have her exact money scripts, the sense that I earn my keep is something that was very much passed down to me from her. And so that's what's interesting about when our culture is very much spend, 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 thinking about even if we change culture slightly, that is going to have echoes on, our children and grandchildren and the way that they view money. No one knows what the economy is going to be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, the one I see today, because I have a 20 and a 21-year-old, is, and I think they get it from me a little bit because I grew up with it, of the spending of money. It's like purchasing buys you a feeling. Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of research about how that money script of we buy things really for the promise of something and has all this emotional stuff that really is the underlying reason for it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's something you see. I can remember many years ago, I was at some sort of conference center where they were broadcasting. It was a Coca-Cola commercial, but they didn't have the sound on. And if you've ever watched a commercial without the sound, it looks insane. You see people like just grinning madly, everyone looking like beaming more than you do on the day your child is born or you get married, And so there's very much a culture and an industry built around selling us feelings. And so, for the low price of, whatever it costs, you'll get that feeling, even though that's not actually true. But we all live in that culture, and it's impossible to separate yourself from that sense.
So regardless of what financial script we might have and emotional thoughts about money, how do we start to manage that and decrease the stress? What are some of the things that we can do to have a better relationship and not let it freak us out so much?
Well, one of the things that is really important is to kind of spend a little time thinking, being introspective and thinking about what does money mean to you? And the reason why that's important is because if you are living with the idea that money is love, and so you are working really hard so that you can shower your family with presents, that is something that is going to cause you stress if, you lose your job, for instance, or, you will feel stress that you can't show your family love if they keep saying like, no, don't work so hard. Come have dinner with us. So, knowing what you view of money as can help you to recognize when you're doing things to show love, for example, that are actually counterproductive. Also, if you recognize that you see, for instance, someone might also think that money is security, you might realize that you are holding on to your money more tightly than you need to, when you could spend money to maybe start your own business or go back to school to get, that training that you need to earn more money. If you feel money is security, you might be like, oh, I don't want to spend the money on myself. That's just a waste of money. Then you can recognize, no, I am focusing on the security that I feel, and actually I would feel more secure if I had better skills or if I had this business that I built myself. And so recognizing where your emotions are kind of leading you down the wrong path with money can make a huge difference. And that is even just stopping and having a gut check when you have a money decision can make a big difference. So
a lot of it is just becoming more self-aware of some of those tricks that end up happening to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to do a lot of things mindlessly in our culture. I mean, we're mindless eaters, we're mindless internet surfers, and we're mindless spenders. And everyone is guilty of this. And so kind of bringing your mind back into things and being present in the moment when you make your financial decisions and affects more than just, money, straight money. I mean, it's also career decisions and family decisions and all of that. So being mindful and trying to think through how this is going to affect your life is very important.
Now, one thing that you talked about that I loved was how financial security is really a myth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a myth that can really be destructive in terms of stress and thinking we have to save a big enough nest egg to quote unquote be secure.
Yeah, I remember the first time I had this realization that, financial security is nothing you can ever really reach. And I have a friend who writes zombie novels. And so, thinking about all the zombie stuff, it was like in a zombie apocalypse, Warren Buffett would not be any better off than any of the rest of us. And so it's this realization that there is always some sort of emergency. Now, granted, Warren Buffett is as unlikely to, survive the zombie apocalypse as like any of the rest of us. But if there is some sort of emergency, it can wipe out any fortune, no matter how big. So the goal is not financial security. Again, to use a more realistic example, there were merchants who, through the Holocaust, had been very, very rich, but that did not stop them from being caught up in the Holocaust. So again, that's really depressing if you think about it that way. Just like, oh my goodness, there's no security and life's just a crapshoot. Well, there is security in recognizing, no, there's no such thing as financial security, but I can trust in myself. I can trust that I will always work hard. We learn flexibility, learn the ability to be frugal and stretch my money. I will learn how to do what I can with what I have. And that actually is incredibly freeing. As terrifying as the idea that there's no financial security and yes, terrible things happen to good people, you can kind of go, well, you know what? But I can overcome that. I am strong enough to overcome that. So it's putting yourself behind the wheel rather than saying, oh, my money can take care of that. It's saying, no, I can take care of that.
You're preaching to the choir there. I love that. It's empowering that, okay, financial security is not possible, right? True financial security. So now it's not about building this huge nest egg. It's about what little baby steps can I do to be agile enough to respond to what might unfold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just knowing that you are capable of rolling with the punches is an incredibly freeing feeling, and knowing that, I could lose my job and we'd be fine. I would do X, Y, and Z if I lost my job. Or, knowing if there was some sort of natural disaster, I could do X, Y, Z to be able to handle that. If there was a zombie apocalypse, I could board up the windows. We'd be fine. So it really is just about learning to trust yourself rather than feeling as though you need to have a certain amount of money that will protect you, because ultimately the buck stops with you.
The last part I want to talk about is probably what I see as one of the biggest financial stressors about money, which is that day-to-day spending, especially in a marriage you have two people, you have a family you're building, and managing the income and the spending, because we all know that type of stressor is a big issue in a lot of marriages. Mm-hmm. So how does someone approach that?
Well, the thing that I feel like people need to realize is that budgeting is not optional. Budgeting tends to be a 4-letter word, and people break out in hives thinking about it. But just because budgeting is not optional does not mean you have to break out the spreadsheets and color code and track every single penny like a demented.
Well, some people love it, and that, God bless them. You're right. I mean, some people love it if it fits you.
Yes. So the thing that's important is finding a system that's going to work for you, that you will actually use and come back to. The important thing is consistency, not the specific system. And so, thankfully we live in the future now, and there's lots of different ways that you can track your spending and budget. There are a bunch of different apps that allow you to basically productively ignore your money, because the apps will do the work for you in setting money aside to save and tracking what your spending is and giving you alerts about, say, hey, you're about to spend too much. And that's a real blessing for people who don't want to track their spending themselves. Then there are other options out there that will just keep track of things and allow you to make the decisions based on the information. So, you might be perfectly good at saving money and sending money to retirement. You just don't want to keep track of the spending yourself. So things like Mint and other options like that can do that for you. So it's about leaning into your nature. What kind of person are you? And find the budget that's going to fit for your nature.
Yeah, all about just playing to your strength rather than fitting yourself into a system that doesn't fit who you are.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. One thing I love about your book is that it has worksheets in it. So as you're going through this and you're really becoming self-aware, you can actually work through it right in your book.
Mm-hmm.
So I will have links to your book. Anything else you want to share with us, Emily?
Just you can find me on Twitter at Emily Guy Berkin if you'd like to connect with me there. My website is emilyguyberkin.com.
And we will have links to your book in the show notes. Emily, thank you so much. I guess I feel less stress about money now.
I'm glad to hear it.
On your marks, get set.
Oh, hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment where we set a little small baby step that we should take in the next 7 days to create a better life. So this week, here's what I want you to do. I want you to identify just one area of your life financially that you got a little stress about. I want you to identify just one and take one proactive action to deal with it. Don't do anything big. Just find one area and take one action to be proactive about dealing with that and see how it feels to know that you're addressing it. Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab where we noodle on how to be a little happier. So I had a meeting with a younger client, the son of a longtime client, but he's in his early 30s. And he was stuck in his job. We were having a conversation about what he might like to do. And he is bilingual and has always wanted to work internationally. And he is a very good steward of his money. And in his early 30s, he is doing extremely well. So we had a conversation, I guess it was about 6-7 months ago, about, well, you're in this position of life. You're not married yet. You've created this financial security, this project you're on is coming to an end. And I said, why don't you just take a year and go live in the country that you want to live in? Go establish yourself, check it out, start to make contacts there, and give yourself a little time freedom to explore whether that's really what you want to do. And if it is, to create the contacts to make it actually happen. So I saw him the other day. And he came in and he goes, Roger, okay, end of the year, I'm moving to Chile. And it's all because of you. I think it wasn't really all because of me, and I had totally forgotten that I told him that because lots of meetings between that now and then, and I didn't have it in my notes. And he is taking proactive steps to create the life that he wants. Now, yeah, he's in his 30s or not. But the reason I bring this up in the Happy Lab is you never know who you're going to have an impact on when you're helping them think creatively and constructively about their life or something they're dealing with. And whether you're a parent, a friend, a mentor, a boss, a leader, you have a lot more impact in the little things that you say that you may totally forget in the lives of a lot of people around you. So obviously be careful what you say and be honest about it. But how awesome is that to know that we can all help each other on this journey? I think lean into that. If you're in a position where you can speak into someone else's life and help them think constructively, lean into it because it's a great feeling when you can help direct a young life. Well, we've been talking about financial stress today. And getting close to retirement and transitioning to retirement can be a really stressful time because we're leaving the workforce. We're going to be earning a lot less or nothing relative to the careers that we've built over time. So a lot of times it feels like we don't have control over things. That's one reason why I built the Agile Retirement Management process, because it focuses your intention on taking proactive little steps on things that you actually have control over. So if you'd like to learn more about Agile Retirement Management and how this new process can help you become more empowered and find more clarity about your retirement, go to 5minuteretirementmakeover.com and sign up for the 3-video series, which is totally free. Hey, until next week, this is Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.